tomorrow. Do we have a crisis on our hand?
Obviously, we do, because listening to commentary by political actors, including the press conference that was held yesterday by the leadership of the NBC, certainly we do have crisis, because whenever threats are made to defy the Supreme Court of any nation in a democracy, then certainly we're going to have some dangerous moments ahead of us. So we do have a crisis, political crisis, governance crisis. Yes.
And so, how do we fix this?
Well, this issue has many parts. The legal part, and I'm not a lawyer, so I will never pretend to be one. But listening to various opinions, there's no consensus at all, legally speaking. Just like in economics, if you bring 10 crack economists and pose one question to them, we are most likely to get 10 different answers. So in this case, the interpretations are being given by all kinds of things. But what I know is that maybe this is not the time to even get into the laws and base
Yes.
of the problem. What we have to, the question is, what do we do to maintain sanity in our politics? What do we do to avoid constitutional crisis when Parliament meets tomorrow and suppose the NDC defies the decision or the Speaker defies the decision of the Supreme Court? That is what I think we have to work towards avoiding, because when it comes to that, then we are bringing our democracy, democratic governance to some kind of screeches. And I don't think we deserve that. After 32 years or so of republic, this could be the biggest challenge. That is to say, if the threats we've been hearing were to be carried out, it would create a major political logjam for all of us.
And how can we forestall this? Because at this point in time, it appears as though both parties have taken entrenched positions.
Yes. I always tell people that the ultimate objective of governance is to have peace and making sure you protect the well-being of citizens. Ultimately, I mean, you put the legalities aside. We're all looking for a country that stays intact, that can continue despite the serious setbacks and weaknesses. We can still continue to be proud of and all. So when something like this happens, the first thing we try to get people to do is for all the political actors to begin to reflect on the consequences of any serious confrontation between Parliament and the judiciary. The consequences will be grave. So what I think should happen now is for leadership of the parties and even in private with the Supreme Court to discuss how they avoid this confrontation. This cannot be done in public. There's no need to go on the radio station to address these issues. I think leadership of the country should pick this up and quickly in private see how they can negotiate among themselves to forestall any such political calamity that can really challenge all of us as we move on. So whilst the groups may have their own parochial interest, whether it's political interest to gain majority or to be minority, whatever, I think there's a point in time where sober minds should begin to reflect on the consequences. Of course, there will be some who might still want to show where power lies. I have the power, the Constitution allows me to do this. I'm aware of all that, and I'm not going to who is wrong, who is right. I have my own layman's interpretation of the Constitution, but there's not a place for it. So I think what we need now is for our people, our leaders, I should say, of the two political parties, of Parliament, probably with the judiciary, to begin to reflect on what to do to resolve this before it gets out of control. Because tomorrow, I don't want to sit by the television and see people throwing punches like they did at the beginning of the previous. Yes, it shouldn't happen again. Yes.
So we spent a few minutes talking about the lawmaking arm of government. Now, since this issue came up, the judiciary has also come into focus. There are those who are expressing concern that rather than it bringing some form of finality to some of these issues, it's rather generated confusion. What are your thoughts?
You see, basically, in any democratic governance, things revolve around the three legs of governance: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, parliament, as we call it. And each of them is assigned by the Constitution certain roles. And then there is the principle of independence of each of these institutions, not infringing upon the other. But when you look at the roles assigned to the three legs of government, clearly, in basic terms, Parliament's role is to make laws. The judiciary is to interpret laws, and the executive is to implement the laws. You see, basically, that's elementary school civics to know about. Now, in the process of that, Parliament is the master of his own laws, simply referring to the standing orders and the rules and procedures for carrying out its work. That's for Parliament. But when it comes to the interpretation of the law, it goes to the judiciary. In all cases adjudicated by the judiciary, always the loser blames the court. In most cases, they blame the court. So I can understand why people who are aggrieved by that can raise concerns, and they have the right to raise the concerns and criticize and all. But all the time, let's make sure that we do not raise issues to discredit institutions that are the apex institutions of our democratic governance. So I guess the point I'm making is that, and I'm not the one to judge, from that elementary perspective, the Parliament cannot interpret the law. And especially in the present case, clearly to me, from my layman's reading of the Constitution, the issue at hand is a constitutional issue, because it is the Constitution that defines whoever or what vacating seats means. It's in the Constitution, Article 97. So once the Constitution is the one, but not the standing orders, the Constitution, then any conflict over that particular article, any controversy over that must go to the Supreme Court to make a ruling. And I think that's what they've done. I don't think they've decided on the substantive matter, simply putting a halt to the so-called vacationing of the seats by the four parliamentarians. So there's a certain process, and I think the clarity of this is being lost. Whether the Supreme Court is all NPP people or not is immaterial at this point. Whether they've been biased because there are certain cases of representation, the sole case that they have sat on for all this while, it's also important, but it's immaterial. The material point right now is whether the four MPs should keep their seats until the matter is resolved, or the Speaker's ruling gives the minority the automatic assumption of the majority role. These are the issues. And that is where I think both parties are making threatening statements, and I'm hoping that, as I said earlier, we can find some cool heads to begin to reflect on the implications of their actions tomorrow in particular when they meet, and how this may seriously and badly affect Ghana's reputation as a democratic society.
All right, Prof. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We're grateful for your time.
You're welcome.
So that is Professor Bafo Ajimanjia, former UN advisor on governance, and we're speaking about the situation we have on our hands. I think the chorus is quite the same in terms of the people we've spoken to. When, with regard to the way forward, they believe that cool heads must prevail. There ought to be some conversation somehow for us to make some progress. So quickly, let me hear from you. 0535 183317, 0535 183317. I'll hear from you and then quickly check what is trending on social media as well. This is the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM. The number to reach us on is 0535 183317.